Week 10 is officially under wraps, and this week we have a doozy when it comes to the fantasy football waiver wire. A ton of players that can help you on your pursuit to clinching that playoff spot. We'll go over 10 and more today. If you guys enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Comment your biggest waiver wire decision. I'll try to get to as many as possible. And of course, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. We are on the road to 40,000. I appreciate you guys for that continued support. But with that being said, let's get right into it. All right, before I get into the official top 10 list, I'll be going over some guys that should be rostered in your leagues, but if they are available, they would be worthy for a spot on today's video. Devin Singletary, running back of the Houston Texans, big-time performance against the Cincinnati Bengals. Looks like the starting running back on that team. Obviously, Dameon Pierce has missed these last couple of weeks, but Devin Singletary has been by far the more efficient of the two this whole season, and I wouldn't be shocked that even when Dameon Pierce comes back, Devin Singletary is traded as this team's starting running back. Zach Charbonnet, running back of the Seattle Seahawks. Another game of out-snapping Kenneth Walker. Obviously, with Kenneth Walker there, his path to potential standalone value looks a little bit bleak. But if anything were to happen to Kenneth Walker, this is one of the highest implied upside plays in the entirety of fantasy football. He needs to be rostered in every single league. Is rostered in about 60% of leagues at this current point. Tajay Spears, running back of the Tennessee Titans. Very similar case to that of Zach Charbonnet. Obviously, if Derrick Henry's healthy, Tajay Spears is probably not going to be a big difference maker in fantasy. But if anything were to happen to Derrick Henry, Tajay Spears has shown that he's an efficient running back and he can contribute on third downs. And I do think he would possess RB2 level upside if anything were to happen to the King himself. Elijah Moore, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns, big time bounce back performance, 7 targets, 5 receptions, 44 yards, and a touchdown this past week. Big comeback victory for the Cleveland Browns over the Baltimore Ravens. Deshaun Watson looked phenomenal in the second half. First half obviously had his struggles. The Ravens are a very good defense in their own right, but we were able to see this Cleveland Browns offense dissect the Ravens in the second half. If we're getting that level of Deshaun Watson moving forward, I want the number 2 wide receiver on this team with Elijah Moore, and he's currently rostered in about 50% of leagues. If he is available in your league, he has to be a claim this week. Kyler Murray, quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals, first game of the year, coming off that ACL injury. We saw prime Kyler Murray, big-time scramble that was able to get them into field goal position to win that game. If we're getting that level of Kyler moving forward, if he's able to, start feeling more comfortable, get in rhythm with this offense, I think he's got top 5 level upside. I think right now he's probably a top 12 to 15 baseline quarterback. But if you even need some more upside at the position, let's say you had Kirk Cousins and you need a player with some upside to get you moving forward, I think Kyler Murray possesses that level of upside. Same thing with Josh Dobbs, quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. Last 2 games has been absolutely sensational for this team. Really alleviated the hopes for Minnesota Vikings fans. A couple weeks ago when Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles, this team was probably headed for a top pick, but obviously Josh Dobbs comes in at the trade deadline, has performed admirably, will be getting Justin Jefferson back, and I do think he has to be rostered in fantasy football, given the passing ability he has shown, on top of the elite rushing ability that he does possess. Trey McBride, tight end of the Arizona Cardinals. Mentioned that with Kyler Murray coming back, I project this Cardinals offense to be better moving forward, and Trey McBride was his number 1 target in this past week's game. Tight end has been, a fruitful position so far this year, a lot of big names emerging, and I think Trey McBride is next up on that list, has been an absolute target monster since coming back into the fold for this Arizona offense. But now we move on to my official top 10 list, starting off with number 10 himself, Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals. And he didn't put up the most eye-popping of stats this past week, but this is a player that runs all of the routes for an offense that now has a much higher passing ceiling moving forward with Kyler Murray at the helm. Marquise Brown should be the number 1 wide receiver here, don't get me wrong, but I do think that Michael Wilson has a prime opportunity for a rookie that's done well with his opportunity so far this year. He's not the sexiest pickup, but I do like betting on young players with roles down the stretch of the fantasy season, and although he's more of a stash right now, you don't really want to get him into your lineup quite yet, he could have the utility that we are looking for come fantasy playoff time. And as Kyler continues to get back into game rhythm, I think this offense possesses a ton of upside moving forward. Like I said, 33 of the 36 routes this past week for Michael Wilson. In the last few weeks, he has been a full-time player. Therefore, I want to go and pick him up before he has that blow-up game. Number 9 is Rashid Shaheed, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints, and Michael Thomas left early in this past week's game with what's being described as a significant knee injury, according to head coach Dennis Allen, and that really opens the door for Rashid Shaheed moving forward. After a game, he just saw 9 targets in this past week. If Michael Thomas misses any time, I think Rashid Shaheed has the big-time opportunity to be a flex-level play in fantasy fantasy football. He's shown that he can be a good player on the work he's gotten so far this year. And with Michael Thomas out, we saw that target share see a significant uptick this week. The Saints are on bye this week, so maybe you can get him cheaper, maybe 0 to 5% of your fab this week, because I do think that going forward, if he is able to get that wide receiver 2 spot in this team with Michael Thomas out, he has a lot of fantasy upside, whether it's Derek Carr or whether it's Jameis Winston at quarterback. Number 8 pick of the week is going to be Rico Dowdle, running back of the Dallas Cowboys, and this is more of an implied upside play. Like, if you need a player to start this week, Rico Dowdle's probably not going to be your guy off the waiver wire. But if you, let's just say you're in first or second place in your league and you want to get ahead for the fantasy football playoffs, I think Rico Dowdle is one of the most valuable handcuffs in the entirety of fantasy football. He's a top 15 graded back per PFF amongst running backs with 45 plus carries this year. And I think this is a clear handcuff situation. Like I kind of said, we know Tony Pollard right now is going to be the starting running back, but Rico Dowdle has shown he is the clear-cut number 2 on this team, ahead of Deuce Vaughn, ahead of, Malik Davis, who's on the practice squad. This is the number 2 running back for the Dallas Cowboys. A Dallas Cowboys offense has been one of the top 5 offenses in football and the best offense in football since the San Francisco 49ers meltdown that they had. Again, this could be a very valuable role for Rico Dowdle. Tony Pollard right now is top 5 in expected fantasy points per game this year, despite being one of the more inefficient running backs in the entirety of fantasy football. Like I kind of said, this is an elite implied upside play. If anything were to happen to Pollard, or if Rico Dowdle were to downright outplay him and take the job moving forward, Rico Dowdle has top 10 level upside in fantasy football, and I want to get ahead of the curve on this. Pollard, like I kind of mentioned, top 5 in expected points per game. And this data was prior to this week's game against the New York Giants, where Tony Pollard received 4 red zone rushing attempts and 3 inside the 5 carries. Like, if Rico Dowdle is able to get that type of role, if Pollard were to miss time, this could be a league-winning, 20 fantasy point per game stretch player come fantasy playoff time. You have to be ahead of the curve and go and pick up Rico Dowdle. Number 7 is going to be Jayden Reed, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, and this is currently the leading receiver of the Green Bay Packers this year. With Christian Watson struggling since coming back, Reed has looked like the best Packers receiver in my opinion, and is their main slot option in 11 personnel. He's a good young player, and despite the turnovers from Jordan Love, he's shown a willingness and success to throw the football down the field. I'm excited to see how this usage keeps going up for Jayden Reed, because like I said, I do think he's their best receiver right now. And if they want Jordan Love to develop and if they want to win some games, I think Jayden Reed will be a focal point of the offense moving forward. Number 6 is Quentin Johnston, wide receiver of the LA Chargers. And the reason why he's on this list is that he's finally a full-time player in these last 2 games with Josh Palmer out. He caught all 4 of his targets this past week, including a touchdown against the Detroit Lions. And I think there's a lot of upside for him moving forward in this offense, tethered to Justin Herbert. It really just rides on QJ playing up to that first-round pick label that he was selected with this year. He hasn't played well the majority of the year so far, but the last 2 weeks have been by far his best 2 games, and I'm betting on the upward trend moving forward. In terms of fab, like I kind of said, everybody in this 10 to 6 range, I think I would be willing to spend, 0 to 10% of your remaining fab on. I think they're upside shots. They all possess different types of utility. Number 5 is going to be Ty Chandler, running back of the Minnesota Vikings. And with Alexander Mattison suffering a concussion this week, we're going to need to monitor Madison's health status moving forward. But if he were to miss any time, we're potentially getting a bell cow running back on an offense that projects much more favorably now than they did even a few weeks ago, given the recent play of Josh Dobbs. Minnesota is a legitimate playoff threat right now, and for running back needy teams, Chandler without Alexander Mattison gives a top 25 level baseline at the position. Number 4 is going to be Noah Brown, wide receiver of the Houston Texans, and he's been incredibly impressive and efficient in his last 2 games. He's caught 13 of his 14 targets in that stretch, and we've seen CJ Stroud lean on him heavily in crucial moments. He's played ahead of Robert Woods this past week, which is an encouraging sign for him moving forward, even when Nico Collins is able to come back for this offense. He would be higher on this list if we knew the exact pecking order moving forward, but I do trust that his rapport with CJ Stroud will earn him more snaps on one of the best passing offenses in the entire NFL. CJ Stroud's playing at an MVP level. These wide receivers are playing really well, and although Tank Dell and Nico Collins are there, I think there's still enough pie for Noah Brown to continue to excel, given how good he's been on the opportunity he's gotten these last 2 weeks. Number 3 is Demario Douglas, wide receiver of the New England Patriots. And he's been extremely impressive. He has been the lone bright spot for this New England offense, and he's gotten more opportunity as the season has progressed. 6+ targets in his last 4 games, and double-digit PPR points in 3 of his last 4 games. The bye week is this week, so maybe you're able to get him cheaper. Maybe instead of 15 to 20%, you can get him at the 10 to 15% label. But he does have games following the bye, against the New York Giants, who were absolutely just carved up by the Cowboys this past week in the passing game, as well as the Los Angeles Chargers, who were carved up by the Lions. I do think, however, with Pop Douglas, there is a limited ceiling based off the offense he's playing in, but I do think he has a good chance to lead this team in targets and become a viable flex play moving forward. Top 40th level outlook come fantasy football playoff time. And speaking of those Dallas Cowboys, my number 2 pickup of the week is going to be Brandin Cooks, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas talked about wanting to get Cooks more involved all week after that down game he had against the Philadelphia Eagles, and we saw that explode on the New York Giants this past week. 3 of his last 4 games have come with double-digit PPR points, and he has established himself as the clear-cut number 2 wide receiver on this Cowboys offense. Michael Gallup, Jalen Tolbert, Ja'Cory Brooks all kind of rotating for that 3rd spot, but it was clear as day that Brandin Cooks was that established number 2 receiver. The main guys there, CeeDee Lamb, Brandin Cooks on the outside for the Cowboys. That was a constant all week this week. I'm excited with this upcoming stretch where the Cowboys offense is on fire. Like I said, they have been playing like the best offense in the NFL. After that bad game against the San Francisco 49ers, they made their adjustments, and we have seen this Cowboys offense take off since week 6. I want access to this passing offense moving forward, the way Dak Prescott's been playing, the amount of passing volume we have seen from this Cowboys passing attack, and Cooks has shown that he can be leaned on even when defenses devote more resources to stopping CeeDee Lamb moving forward. Brandin Cooks is a good player when we saw that ceiling game on full display this week against the Giants. And the number 1 pickup of the week is going to be Keaton Mitchell, running back of the Baltimore Ravens. He's still rostered in sub 50% of leagues, and I think he is a blow all your fab level pickup this week. If he's available in your league, he is worth every single penny on that fab budget. Think Devon A-Chain in Miami. We're talking about the upside of an uber efficient speed back on one of the best offenses in the NFL with Baltimore versus with Miami when it comes to Mitchell versus Devon A-Chain. Mitchell has taken his 14 touches in the last 2 games and has turned them into 200 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns in that stretch. John Harbaugh blamed himself for the lack of touches throughout this game, and he said that the Ravens staff is going to make sure that he is factored more heavily in moving forward. If he can develop into a 15-touch player on this team, we are talking about a league-winning level running back when it comes to Keaton Mitchell. But either way, like I mentioned, if you guys enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below, comment your biggest waiver wire decision. I'll try to get to as many as possible. And of course, if you're new, hit that subscribe button. We are on the road to 40,000. I appreciate you guys for that continued support. But with that being said, good luck. Hopefully you guys can secure your playoff spots in the next few weeks. Take care.